we, the consumers, we have to start waking up and saying, I am not willing to give you my money if you are not going to give me back a product that is going to support the health and longevity of my pet.
About 10 years ago, during that time of my acting days, I booked a pretty cool gig. But this time I was just a prop. I wasn't a lead. I wasn't even a backup. I was basically sitting there providing space for the star herself, Miss Eliza Doolittle, who happened to get a part to star in this role in a pet food commercial. And I'm like, okay, finally, this chick is paying the rent. Now, you've heard me talk about Eliza Doolittle if you've been part of the Holistically Speaking community for quite some time. And this is a really special time of year because I'm about to experience that anniversary, one of those memories that we're not really looking forward to. And it's the 1 year since Miss Eliza has passed. And many of you know her who have been with me here. She sat on the back of my chair. She's been in a number of episodes. You might have even heard her a few times because, man, she was vocal because she was a diva. But I will say this. The reason for this commercial was because this product was promoting a pet food product that was holistic. And of course, the holistic health coach that I am was like, this is a perfect casting. I'm totally going to nail this. Even though I thought Eliza was going to be a huge diva, she was a saint on set because all she had to do was sit in my lap. But the reason why I'm telling you this story is that Eliza was with me for close to 19 years. She was the longest heartbeat I ever had in my space. And I never shared time with anything longer, really. More road trips, everything like that. But I thought, when they asked me in that casting call originally, why do you want to do this commercial? And why do you want to bring your pet into this commercial? It wasn't so much about the cash, although that was nice. It was about the fact that if I'm going to live my life holistically, then anyone in my home and environment should be experiencing that too. And when you think about the fact that there are close to 500 million pet owners around the globe, and in the States alone, 86 million that are pet owners. And we use that term loosely because it depends on what you consider a pet, indoor, outdoor, whatnot. But our fur babies are important, and even our non-fur babies. And I thought to myself, what would Eliza's life been like if I had learned more about holistic pet health much earlier in her journey? But I'm so glad that I had her for 19 years and she had the experience she had, because I think she lived as long as she did because I took that holistic approach, holistically speaking. So that got me thinking that I want to have a professional come on the show, someone who understands holistic veterinary care. And all of a sudden I get an email. Hi, I'm a holistic pet vet, and I would love to talk about holistic care. Again, it goes back to things do not happen by accident. And that brings us to Dr. Marlene Siegel. I am so happy to have you here today. I've learned so much about you in the time that I haven't even been in the space with you, but having the opportunity to research the kind of vet you are, all I can say is I wish you were the vet I had in my space for the years that Eliza might have needed that kind of care. So thank you for being here. It is such an honor to know that there are people that see the value in holistic care for their pets just as much as they do themselves. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for having me. You know, what you said was very profound because one of the most common comments I hear, I travel and I teach all over the world, is, I wish I would have known sooner. Those are the operative words. I think everything happens in divine timing, just as you said. And I think this is the opportunity, if somebody's listening to this conversation, this is the time that it's important for you to start learning, expanding your consciousness, expanding your belief systems, which I abbreviate as BS. And as we expand our BS, we were able to let go of the old belief systems that may not be serving us any longer, but it takes us into a new paradigm.
Definitely. So for somebody who has been a vet for a number of years and you're practicing holistic care, I imagine that holistic veterinary care hasn't been something that has really been taught for as long as the traditional medicine, much like with humans as well. I mean, we've really come into the more integrative space, the more holistic approach to healing, probably in the last 20 years, even though that's really the original way that medicine worked. But what moved you from that, that traditional kind of medicine and care into holistic?
So, like everybody, when we make a big life change, it's because there's been some kind of life altering experience, either your own health or the health of a family member or some crisis. And so for me, it was a horse that my daughter was showing. They were in an accident, and the horse saved my daughter's life. And in my quest to fix the horse, is what actually made me leave my traditional training and expand into new horizons, which back then there was no integrative medicine. There was no bioregulatory medicine. There was nobody for me to consult with. But when I was told by equine veterinarians I could either put the horse down or put her to a pasture, that was an unacceptable answer. And so that drove me to find answers where they didn't exist. So at that time, functional medicine was just coming into the human realms. So we're talking 25 years ago plus. And so I was taking all of these webinars and courses from functional medicine doctors as they were learning their industry. And I was taking that and applying it to my pets, and figuring out how that would work. So it was an arduous process, a lot of learning, a lot of expense, and very rewarding.
You know, it's usually something that happens in our own lives that opens our minds to trying something different. From that experience, moving into a more holistic space, what have you found over that time that has helped our animals live longer? Because that's something you spend time on, and you mention a lot, is that you want pets to live 20 years or more. That's what got me that's really pulled me in. I'm like, wow, wouldn't it be great if people could actually have their pets with them much longer and healthier?
Yeah. So there's documentation of animals that have lived into their 30s. It's the toxic lifestyle that we are living in today's modern age that is creating the challenges. So first, I'm going to break down what causes all these problems, because cancer rates in dogs right now are almost 100%. Statistically, they say 1 out of 1.65 dogs get cancer. And this is age irrelevant. I'm seeing cancers in dogs under a year of age. Cats, they say 1 out of 3. I think that's highly underreported. And then when you add autoimmune disease, obesity, arthritis, GI disorders, allergies, skin disease, all of that, it's literally 100% of our animals are coming down with some form of chronic illness. So what is causing that? And the real simple answer is deficiencies of essential nutrients. And those are the essential nutrients are the ones that our body cannot manufacture in sufficient quantities. We need to get them, we have to get them from our diet. So if the food is nutrient depleted, which we know most of our food growing commercially is nutrient depleted because the soils are nutrient depleted, then the individual eating that's going to be nutrient depleted. Then toxicities, and we had probably over 100,000 toxins developed and released into our food and the environment just since World War II. So we're talking 1942. That combination of deficiency and toxicity leads to mitochondrial dysfunction. And the mitochondria have two major purposes in our body. One, they produce energy. We don't have energy, we're not going to be on the planet. But they also provide a communication between themselves and the microorganisms that live in and on our bodies, predominantly the ones in our GI tract. But they communicate. And based on what information they're receiving from our lifestyle and what we're perceiving, they are in charge of uncovering gene expression. So when people on the human side, they go, oh, well, do you have a lot of your family members? Did they have cancer? Because you're likely to get cancer. Well, you're likely to get cancer because you have the same lifestyle. But if you change your lifestyle, the epigenetics that help to determine what turns on and turns off gene expression changes dramatically. Same thing happens for our pets. So we look at the 6-step system that I use to help people understand how do we create a lifestyle that helps support these animals in their highest and best good. It would be like taking a car. when you buy a car, you're given a manual that says what
Mhm.
kind of oil to use, what kind of gasoline you have to have, how often you have to change the oil and do all these maintenance things. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we did that for our pets and our own bodies? Like we had a roadmap on what does health look like? Because
Right.
at least in the US, I don't know if you broadcast everywhere, but in the US, we have a broke care system, not a healthcare
Mhm.
system. We're
Well, you know what? And it's not just in the US. I'm
it's
hearing that report from people all over the world in different countries that say
yeah,
it's sick care elsewhere, you
yeah, and
know?
it's the same.
Yeah.
What happens is we have been conditioned to if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We've
Mhm.
all heard that expression. And so we go on with little expressions of illness or dis-ease. There's another one. I don't believe there's disease. I believe there is dis-ease. When the body is not in balance, it expresses itself in a symptom. Well, in our society, we have focused on naming it, blaming it, and then doing symptom suppression. But that's not fixing the root cause of the problem. So when you suppress a symptom, the body kind of metaphorically says, oh, you didn't get my message. Well, let me get a little louder. And so then it's a little bit of a worse. It could be a relapse or it could be a new problem. And if you still suppress the symptom and you still don't address the root cause, then it keeps escalating until you get into that chronic degenerative state.
Mm. So, are there ways to reverse that just like there are with humans? Can we do that with our pets as well? Because as someone who works in holistic care, I know that there are things that we can do to fight the inflammation and reverse certain effects that we have in our body. Some people have even gone so far as reversing and cancer no more. I mean, we hear so many wonderful stories like that. Is that the same with the makeup of an animal? Or does it depend on the breed? Does it depend on
Well,
the
I mean, it depends on a lot of things, right?
yeah.
You have environmental factors, you have the metaphysical, what's
Yeah.
the metaphysical story behind that particular pet being in that particular family's life with that particular challenge. Nothing happens by accident. And I
Mhm.
think everything has a divine message.
Mhm.
And we on Earth School plane have to recognize what that message may be. And if everything happens for our highest and best good. So
Mhm.
if we reach challenging, like, thank God my daughter and the horse were okay after the accident, but uh, that was a very traumatic experience. I had PTSD for a long time,
Mhm.
you know, worried that she had not survived that incident. And yet that incident, it was what drove me into what I call bioregulatory medicine. And I'm going to make that distinction because in the veterinary world, a lot of pet parents hear the word holistic and they think it's some kind of a woo woo thing.
Mhm.
And they don't realize there is a lot of science, probably way more ancient than the medicine that we practice today. And then we got the term integrative medicine, which, in my opinion, means that you're taking the best of both worlds,
Mhm.
the best of the Eastern medicine, blending it with the best of Western medicine. And then you come together and you have a larger toolkit, which gives you more opportunity to pick the right tool for the right situation that has the best results with the least side effects. Even that term, when I see a lot of my colleagues, they're using their holistic approach or their integrative approach to still name it, blame it. But now instead of using a drug, they're using an acupuncture needle or they're using an herb or an essential oil, but they're still naming, blaming, and doing symptom suppression. So I like to distinguish what I do, and there really is no bioregulatory field in veterinary medicine except what I teach.
Mhm.
And that means that we're looking at the biological pathways. We're actually looking at the body as a machine and we're seeing where have we interrupted the normal biological pathways. As an example, we have an innate immune system. That's the part of our immune system that we don't consciously control. Our body has these internal mechanisms to turn it on and do what it needs to do. But the two cofactors that run that biological pathway are vitamin D and magnesium. So if
Mhm.
deficient in one or both of those cofactors, then that system isn't able to function. Well, not surprisingly, 85%, this was a university study, 85% of dogs eating a kibble diet will be vitamin D deficient. And we know how many people are magnesium deficient. So you can imagine how that's translating into the pets as well. So it's those kind of things that I look at. I test for deficiencies. I test for toxicities. I test these, biological pathways to see where are we interrupting them and how can we get them back online? What do we need to do to help them to function again
And thrive.
and thrive?
Yeah.
Because we are designed to thrive.
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
the fact that we have created this massive amount of deficiency, mass amount of toxicity. We're overwhelming the body's ability to detoxify. And then we're surprised when we have a problem.
Yeah. I wonder how many people out there, when something's in the, let's take example, toxic mold in the house, right? Well, that's a big one that we keep hearing about this day and age. If you are impacted by it as a human, I would imagine it's going to impact something that is smaller, living in your home, that has a much, a much a smaller little body. It's going to affect it if there's the same amount of mold. But again, it's bioindividuality, right? It's knowing what that animal needs, that vehicle, if we're going to use that as an analogy, that specific vehicle where it might be lacking certain things that's making it run effectively, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I want to talk about, because I did mention this earlier, is that idea that an animal can live, like you said, well beyond the 20, 30 years. I take it this depends on what the breed and what the animal is. Because I mean, I've known and I've had a horse that lived over 30 years, but I've had a dog that's lived 17 years. So is it based on what the species is we're talking about, or you're saying like most animals, if not all, should pass that 20-year mark?
Let's keep it to horses, dogs, and cats.
Okay.
And they should pass that mark. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So can we go through some of the other parts of your system? I know that this is a really, I want to bring something else up too, because I'm really listening to what you're saying. And you mentioned words like divine, metaphysical. I even heard you mention something that seemed very Louise Hay, right? Which is like the all is well. And you seem to come from a much more spiritual way of being, which I think is beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you incorporate that into your practice?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
One of the really important things that you talk about is the metaphysical and just helping a pet transition. And, with Eliza leaving me about a year ago on April 1st, I'm really curious what your experience might be with that.
When I asked you, have you communicated with her? Has she given you signs? And literally, this is the second time as I said that, every hair on my body is standing up. So I know she is trying to send you messages, whether or not she's been successful, I don't know. But the messages that they send to us can be in so many different forms. It could be in a thought, a dream, something that shows up that you didn't expect. It could be a toy of theirs that suddenly shows up and you didn't see anything before. I was outside in my garden the other day picking up acorns because I make medicine out of them. So I'm laying on my lounge chair and I had just found all the acorns that were around me. And then every time I opened my eyes, I didn't move. There was another acorn and then another and then another. And it just kept happening. And I had to laugh and say, who is trying to get my attention that's dropping acorns? So, that's interesting. I helped a beautiful patient of mine transition yesterday. And I always ask my pet to give me something that I could relate to the pet parent, a vision of something, so that I can let them know that they have truly transitioned and they are in a way better space. And this beautiful dog was doing zoomies. And I said to the owner, was she the type of dog that would do zoomies? And he just, the smile, from the tears to the smile. And he said all the time, that was her favorite thing, was to do zoomies in the yard. Now, I didn't know them before this, so how I would not have been privy to that information.
Yeah.
I had another dog that showed me jumping off the front of a boat, like just golden retriever stretched out, if you can imagine, full length out, jumping off the front of the boat. And I had never met these people before. I literally went to do a house call. And I said, did your dog like to jump into the ocean off your boat? And he looked at me and he went, favorite thing in the world. And so they do communicate with us.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're in so much pain that we can't hear it, we can't see it. But what I help my pet parents to do is be open to those little signs. It doesn't have to be this booming sound in your ear. It could be that serendipitous, oh my gosh, did I just hear that? Did I just see that? I had a lady once, this is one of my favorites. She knew we were going to be doing an exploratory surgery. So we were going to do it after hours so she could spend the day with her dog. And then when everything was quiet, if I opened the dog up and it was something bad, then we would say goodbye on the surgery table. And so everything transpired. The dog had so advanced cancer. So we said goodbye on the table. And I told her, be open to receiving a message from your pet. She gets home, calls me back 10 minutes later, and she said, you are not going to believe this. Try me. And she had been singing to this dog all day, you are my sunshine. You know, there's a song, you are my sunshine.
I know.
So she walks in the house, her TV is on to a radio station, and the song that she walked into was, you are my sunshine. I don't know about you, Hilary, but I have never heard that song on the radio.
No, that's an old song. I have had some moments myself when she first passed. Probably within the first month, I was at my boyfriend's house, and she used to love going there. And she slept underneath in the drawer in the trundle bed in the guest room. And it was emotional to be there because it was the first time I'd been there without her. And I remember going down to the drawer and just pulling it out just so I can like put my head there and rest there and like maybe pick up a smell, even though she didn't really smell, but you know your animal's scent. And I swear to God, something brushed my leg like a tail. And I'm like, what just happened? And I honestly had to take a look back, and I'm like looking for clothes and anything that could be in the way, and I was wearing shorts. And I'm like, that's hi, baby. I've had a lot of moments like that, like where I saw little footprints on top of my bed. So those moments happen. I'm very open and receptive to it. Yeah. And I know you asked me if I had any signs, and those were two of them. And if I'm connecting with her in some way, and I actually have someone that is working on doing some artwork with her, some of her remains in it, and then trying to find different ways to incorporate her still into my life, because that's a big part of my life, 19 years. But I love that that's the kind of vet you are. But she had a beautiful transition. She really did. So thank you for sharing that.
Very happy that you recognized her. And so like, where did that conversation come out of, right? All of a sudden we changed gears and we're saying that. And again, when things come out of my mouth, I just trust that there's a reason why I'm going to say it. And that one landed for you. And then she lit me up going, yes. That's very cool. She recognized
my hair's raising on
that's
my
an
arms.
girl, right? That's your girl.
That's my girl.
Confirmation that yes, we're not alone. I love doing mediumship work because it really helps me to understand that we are in this frequency, which is a very dense, heavy dimension. But that doesn't mean there aren't other frequencies. And so when we can raise our frequency and they can lower, we can find a common ground where we can actually communicate.
Yeah. I'm gonna be paying a little more attention to the signs in the next coming days, because I think it's going to be very powerful. I just have a feeling. It's a gut feeling. Yeah. Thank you for that. I appreciate you sharing that.
Third time. That's so cool.
She's never been a quiet one, I'll tell you that.
I can tell, strong personality. I can feel that.
Just like mama.
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you so much. And I am really excited because I think there's going to be a lot of people out there that are going to get that message and then be more open to receiving for their loved ones, whether they're two-legged or four-legged. They're just on the other side of the veil.
Yeah. And that's just one way that we can take care of them on this side of the rainbow bridge or the other, right?
Yes. And honor them. Absolutely. You know, if you have the lens that everything happens for your highest, best good, and that everything in, I call it Earth School. And if everything around us is a clue, like you're on a treasure hunt and everything is a clue, the way I interpret my clues is through flow or resistance. So when I feel a lot of resistance in a particular direction, I'm trying to accomplish something and nothing's going right, everything seems to be blocking my way. That to me is the divine clue that I'm a little off track, maybe just a little bit, maybe a whole lot. Maybe I have to do a 180. But whatever that is, I have to stop, take a step back, take a deep breath, and really evaluate the situation and try to find out, what am I being guided to do? When we are in flow, that is when we think everything is serendipitous and it just works out perfectly, just like you wanted to have something to honor your fur baby. And then look, I show up, right? It's just the timing is, you always go, wow, isn't that interesting?
Right.
So I use emotions as my determiner of flow and resistance. And I think emotions are another big clue. I actually teach this to my pet parents when they do my courses, is because they are the best way for us to recognize when we're in flow versus resistance. So everything in the emotional realm has an equal and opposite. So we have very low vibrations: shame, anger, guilt, frustration, hatred, betrayal, all of these that actually feel very heavy when you even say them. And then you have the other side of the spectrum, which is love and gratitude and compassion and kindness and joy. And as I say those words, I literally can see more light coming in. So as people come with their pets to me, I'm listening for those key words. Are they feeling shame? Are they feeling like this keeps happening to them? Are they victims? Or are they really positive and convinced that this is going to work out, and they have the trust and faith that it's going to work out for everybody's highest and best good, whatever that is? Very different approaches and very different energies associated with that. So I think it would be, that's one piece of it. That's actually number 6 in my process, is clearing trapped emotions. Because I do believe that everything that happens with our pets, whatever their challenges are, has some kind of a reflection or a message or something that we can benefit from. We may never know that. What if that pet's challenge opened up a pet parent to a whole new lifestyle where they cleaned up their environment, they changed their own diet in addition to the pet's diet, and maybe they were able to stop a trajectory that they were on that they weren't even aware that they were on.
That's a really good point. And I will use myself as an example here. I always said that Eliza was like my litmus test for stress.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is that she knew if she didn't want to be around my attitude, right? And animals are so perceptive with that. They don't come with the ego. So I would know, if she would know when I'm sick, she would nurture. If I was stressed and I was running around and just not centered, she was like, I don't have time for that. Right. And it's so true what you say, because I learned so much from her about being present. Right. And even in her sickness in that last 6 months to a year, there was something about her that really taught me about being present, being in the now, loving every moment, because all she knew how to do was love, So I completely agree with you on that. And I'm so glad that we're touching on that. I do want to stop real quick and just say that you do have a free ebook that you share, and that's the 6 keys to health. And we're going to put that in the notes of this podcast. Is there anything you want to share about that folks that are tuning in will know what they're receiving if they're getting that ebook?
Oh, I'd love to. So the first step is we have to stop doing the things that are causing the problems. And as common sense as that sounds, how many times do people go out to restaurants and for themselves, and they never ask what the food is cooked in? What are the oils? Is it organic? Is it conventional? And they just order off the menu and they eat whatever they make for you. And so you're eating carcinogens, you're eating toxins, and you don't ever question what that's going to do to your body or your children if they're eating with you. So when I say it, I do say it very lovingly, but at some point, we all have to take responsibility for our actions and for our choices. So I start with step number 1. We have to stop doing the things to our pets that is actually causing their problems. So that means food is number 1. And I go into a lot more depth on food, to feed a species appropriate diet. And I have lots of information on that. So if you look at what animals eat in the wild, and this is my litmus test for myself and learning what is the right choice to make, you never see lions and tigers and bears and wolves. They don't eat processed food out in the wild. In fact, there's no mechanism for processed foods in the wild, which tells me that nature did not design them to eat this man-made waste of the Industrial Revolution. That's basically what we're doing. Is we're taking all the waste product from our food processing from the Industrial Revolution, and we're feeding it into our pets. And because it is so toxic, they have to burn it at high temperatures, make it into a dry kibble, stick it together with a bunch of carbohydrates, and then they have to add nutrients back in to have some semblance of nutrition. But those nutrients are oftentimes synthetic. So the body really doesn't recognize what you're giving it. And dogs and cats are both carnivores. Dogs are scavenger carnivores because for many years they've learned to live off a man's waste. And cats are obligate carnivores. They have no dietary requirement for carbohydrates. And yet all processed foods are 40 to 60% carbohydrate. It'd be like saying, "Oh, I don't feel like putting gas in my car today. That's what it's supposed to run on.
Right.
I'm going to try air, or I'm going to try water.
Water.
A different substrate.
Not going anywhere.
It's going to be energy, right? Your car doesn't have an ability to adapt. But the reason why our animals can live on these inappropriate diets is because they're trying to adapt and survive. Maybe 500 years from now, if they've eaten kibble long enough, maybe the body will make changes and start to learn how to burn that as a fuel appropriately, but it isn't happening right now. So in that, stop doing the things that are causing diseases, learn what a species appropriate diet is, learn what healthy water looks like. And it's not the stuff coming out of the tap that is loaded with hormones and chemicals and glyphosate and all these toxins, and it's unstructured. Then we look at the environment that they're living in. You and I get to leave our house periodically, but for a lot of our indoor pets, they never leave. So what are you cleaning the house with? What are the chemicals you're putting on your floor? What are you doing in your counters? What's the air quality that you have? Do you have products that are off-gassing formaldehyde? These are all really important. You mentioned mold. Are your air ducts clean? I live in Florida. Mold is a huge problem. We have rains and hurricanes and tornadoes and leaks in our houses and sinks, look underneath your sink. Do you have any leaks under there? So these are really important areas to look at. And then last but not least are the ants that live in our brain. And these are the automatic negative thoughts. So you mentioned when you're stressed and you're running around, and think about how many people have anger issues and they have household emotional problems, and they're going through relationship issues. And there's a lot of negative energy. Well, what happens when we're experiencing these negative thoughts and these negative experiences? We are creating neurochemicals. Our body is literally creating these chemicals to communicate to the microbiome, to communicate to our mitochondria, which then change our gene expression. Because what we're saying is we don't live in a safe environment. We have issues out here in Earth world. And so we need a different genetic expression. And so we start to see more pathogens come up to the surface. And pathogens are simply the normal guys that live in and on our body, but they know that the mothership is going down, or they sense that the mothership is going down. So they produce pathogens to survive the toxicity. So it isn't that the bacteria and the viruses and the parasites, they're not the problem. The problem is the terrain. What is the environment that we're creating for them that is causing them to have to express, kind of like weeds in your garden? I live in a food forest. And so when my soil wasn't healthy, I had more weeds growing than I had healthy plants. Not that the weeds were bad. They were trying to establish a terrain so that good things could come behind them. Same thing happens in our body. So when we see pathogens, they're not our enemy. They're really the clue that we have a terrain that is not hospitable for health and survival.
Yeah. And these are the kind of things that, a lot of times we think of, some humans don't even think of themselves. You know, we're not all living holistically. We're not all even living with an integrative approach or bioregulatory. Is that the term you use? I
Yeah.
like that a lot. And it's taking small steps. But I will say this, and this is really good information. I love that you're sharing this. I love that you have the courses too. And we'll put all that in the notes of this podcast. But there's more people that have pets than not, right? So, but not everyone is going to think about buying the best food there is. I mean, I know that my mom gives her dog a brand that is like raw meat and it's supposed to be the best for the dog. And I'm thinking, is that the best? I mean, because the pet industry has boomed and we know there's a lot of products on the market. And you mentioned the kibble, you know, talking about the kibble, but some people can't afford that high end food that's more like the primal animal they were. So where's the happy medium with that? Because they have to eat.
Yeah. So it's interesting because the way you couch that is you go, wow, they can't afford it. I will tell you 100% that when people's pets are ill and they love their pets, they will come up with a large amount of money to try to save their pet.
That is
What
true.
I want to do, yeah, people we're trained that way. And even
Yeah.
in our world, right? I don't have insurance, but most people have insurance. So they do egregious things to their body and then they go to the doctor because it's covered on their insurance. And then they get a pill for the ill or a diet for the disease. What we have to start doing is taking ownership of our actions and start to create a healthier lifestyle. If that means living within those species appropriate boundaries, then we need to invest in healthcare so we don't spend the money on broke care. Really, that's the
Yeah.
bottom line. So
Yeah.
when I have people look at the cost differences, and if you have a Great Dane or a Great Pyrenees, yes, they're big dogs. But then, if you're going to own a big dog like that, then there's a responsibility to be able to afford them.
I think that comes with that's the first thing is the responsibility. What can you afford? You're not going to buy a horse if you can't afford a horse. And we know that horses
Yes.
are much more expensive.
Yes.
So
And I don't mean it as an insult to somebody, but because pets are a luxury and we do have the responsibility to care for them, I think it's important that number one, we research the kind of animal that you want to get. Well, look, I wouldn't buy a BMW because the maintenance care on those cars is ridiculous. My daughter wanted to buy a BMW for her first car, and I said, you can't afford that because the first time your car breaks down, you won't be able to afford the parts and the maintenance. Same deal, right? But people get pets and they don't think about the long-term consequences. And, let's just call a spade, right?
Yeah.
We need to be responsible for the actions that we make.
Yeah.
So step number one is learn about what is a species appropriate diet and think about what you would spend or what you are spending in broke care.
Yeah.
Like a standard veterinary visit these days, it can run anywhere from $100 to $1,000. Well, for $1,000, you can feed that animal really well for a long time.
Yeah, and that's a really good point because we actually have a saying in the world of integrative nutrition, holistic health. If it's made by people in white coats, you're going to see people in white coats.
100%.
Meaning, isn't that? I love that because it's true. It doesn't mean, look, we live in a world that's convenient. We can go to a store, we can buy things that have been processed, but the less processed and the less ingredients that we consume, especially if we can't pronounce them, the better. Same thing for our pets. And there's a lot of stuff on the market that, just looks like it might be good and it has great labeling and it says the word natural on it, which never means natural anything. And I don't want to bring up specific food brands, but the pet food industry is definitely a billion-dollar industry.
It's a
trillion-dollar industry. Okay, I stand corrected, which is even more reason to be very selective when you're walking down the aisles or if you're ordering online.
Yeah.
So
it all starts with education. I can't make that any easier because, like you said, there's a lot of labels, there's a lot of misinformation, and the companies that are making these processed foods are in the business to sell you their product, right? So they're selling us on fast, cheap, and convenient. Look at the average grocery store, right? We're told shop the perimeter. because everything in the center is processed foods. Look at,
That's right.
are we allowed to say Kellogg's and all the attack that they're under?
Right. Well,
For
they
all
won't be sponsoring me anytime soon, and that's okay.
Hey, I haven't bought their product for a long time,
Me
which
neither.
brings us to the next point. We as consumers drive the businesses. If we don't buy something, they won't keep making it because no one's buying it. Let me say that again. It is our spending, it is how we vote with our dollars that determines what we are going to get for those dollars. If we continue to support companies that are making processed foods, they're going to continue to make processed foods. Yeah. If we demand something healthier, they will start to shift. And I will tell you that I already see some of these big box companies. I won't mention any names, but there is a big box company that bought a boutique raw pet food company. And it's because they see that there's a market share going in that direction. And that's what business is. It's looking for market share.
It's which bottom is line. Yeah.
It's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's just that we, the consumers, we have to start waking up and saying, I am not willing to give you my money if you are not going to give me back a product that is going to support the health and longevity of my pet.
Right. And the best way to really think about that is looking at it as currency. Currency isn't only money. Currency is your time. Currency is your health. Currency is your well-being. Currency is your environment. Everything is part of that currency. So if you're going to exchange the currency of money for something, you better get currency of good health and product back. And that brings me to something that it makes me think, like even sometimes really good products. Like I was at the store a week or so ago for human products. And one of my favorite items that was actually rather healthy with little of anything in it besides the good earth was no longer there and discontinued. And that just lends itself to, it makes me think, I'm like, not enough people are finding value in a product like that can really be supportive of your health. Yes. Right. So it is up to us because they told me, they said, oh, we discontinued them. You discontinued that? That product was awesome. Where do I get it elsewhere? Yeah. So yeah, it's really up to us to be our own healthcare advocates. And I guess in that sense, it's really up to us to be the healthcare advocates for those animals that we bring into our home for hopefully 20 years or more. Yes. Right.
Yes, absolutely.
Great. This is such a wonderful conversation. I do want to mention that Dr. Siegel has this wonderful ebook that is free. It will be a download available on the Holistically Speaking podcast page. Of course, she has a number of courses as well. Before you go, I want to play a little game with you that I do with my podcast guests. Just a little fun that we have here on Holistically Speaking. Okay. And I call this the brain candy game because I'm a nerdy neuroscience person. And basically what I've been doing is I'm writing down the words that you've been saying. And what I would like you to do is just come back with the first word that comes to mind, a little word association. Does that make sense? All right. Okay, here we go. First word, horse.
Lily.
Holistic.
Lifestyle.
Lifestyle. That's my next word.
Lifestyle choices.
Metaphysical.
The universe.
Toxins.
Harmful.
Ants.
Automatic negative thoughts.
Divine.
Everything that there is. God is everything and everything is God. So the universe.
I feel that. Flow.
The direction we're one word. Flow. Purpose.
That's even better than what you were about to say because you sat on it. I love that. Bioregulatory. Great word.
True understanding.
Veterinarian.
Passion.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't ask you that. And that's something I'd like to ask you with closing the brain candy game. What made Dr. Siegel become a vet?
I incarnated knowing what I wanted to be. No kidding. I played with stuffed animals. I captured lizards when I was a kid. I lived in South Florida, never played with dolls. So I always knew I wanted to be a vet. In elementary school, people would bring me the sick gerbils and their little pets. And I would walk down to the local veterinarian and he would give me the medicine, always at no charge. And I would take that animal home and I would make it better and then send it back to its mommy. Or if it was a wildlife case, I would fix it up. And to this day, I still do that pay it forward. I have students and volunteers that come into my practice and I model for them. What is that like to pay it forward? And so that's what I always wanted to be. Even though I became a paramedic during high school, it was still always, I never veered off course. I always wanted to be a veterinarian. And I'm now rounding 40 years in actual clinical practice, 45 if you include all the education. And I am more passionate today and I'm more energized and I'm more excited about the opportunities that we have to make such an impact. It's why my baseline course for veterinarians is called Transforming Vet Medicine. And I named it over 10 years ago. I just knew that was the path that I was on. If you would have asked me, would you ever have expected to have that big of an impact in your industry? Would never. In fact, I was so shy, I couldn't talk in front of a group of 5 people. But when you step into your purpose, then your world changes. And so now I speak internationally and truly am transforming vet medicine, one person, one pet at a time.
Love that. That's so beautiful. And it just came from the heart space. So I want to ask you one more word, even though we're out of the brain candy game. What would be your word for purpose?
It's what you came here for.
Yeah. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Divine. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing who you are and being a part of this process and joining me on Holistically Speaking. This is a special episode, as you know, for me. And I hope that those tuning in have long, loving relationships like I had with Eliza and can find the best way to treat them holistically so that they are right there by your side for the long run. Thank you, Doctor.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody.
All right, my friends, if you are interested in learning more about holistic pet care, and I know because you're a loving, compassionate human being, if you have a pet, this is definitely the way you want to treat your pet in their life as well. I want you to get in touch with Dr. Marlene Siegel and even grab a copy of her free ebook, which is 6 Keys to Health and Healing Pets Holistically. Holistically speaking, you can check that out in the notes of this podcast to find out more. And listen, this is a very special episode for me as I get to share about Miss Eliza. It is marking a year since she is no longer with me in this space, but I know she's with me every day, as Dr. Siegel mentioned in this episode, in this conversation. But there are a lot of pet parents out there I know like me who went through the loss, went through the grief, and it's a process. It really is. If you know somebody who's going through this or has gone through it or might be facing that in the near future, I have a beautiful line of pet grieving cards that you might remember from an earlier episode with Wolfie's Wish with Erica Messer. She created a lovely line that lets you tell somebody how much you care when it comes to losing their pet. And she's also an incredible artist. And I know that personally because she's in the moment working on a piece for me, but she also has a beautiful line of 8x10 pet portraits on acrylic that she will create for you, meaning that she is doing a portrait of your pet. And if you use the code Eliza Doolittle for either the grieving cards or for a personal pet portrait, you will get 10% off your purchase. So I'm going to share that in the notes of this podcast for either the line of the grieving cards or that pet portrait. Use Eliza Doolittle so she's always out there helping you out, and you'll get 10% off your purchase from Wolfie's Wish. That is our gift to you as pet parent to pet parent. We know how important they are. All right. With that being said, I just want you to know that there are so many ways that you can keep your pet happy and safe. And you just being a good person and a loving, compassionate human being is the first step. So thank you for that. I love you. I believe in you, and I'm sending hugs your way. Be well.